Hello, how are you?
Hi, good. Is this Nika?
This is.
Hi, Duane.
Hi, Duane. Nice to meet you. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. I always feel weird with phone interviews because I always feel like I'm like interrupting someone's day. It's different than the Skype one, so I always think.
It's fine. No. This is scheduled and I'm doing interviews, so absolutely.
Right.
Are you really in Idaho?
I am. It's a pretty exciting place.
That's cool. I'm in Nashville.
Yeah, I'm sure that's much more exciting than Idaho. Idaho's beautiful, but not the most fun state out of the mountains.
No, that's cool.
So yeah, let's dig in. I know we got a limited amount of time. Tonic Immobility is coming out next Friday already.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've already had it for, I think over a month. I've listened to it.
Wow.
I don't even know how many times. A million times.
Okay.
Absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. How do you feel like it is going to stand up against the other 5 albums?
I think it's every bit as good as any of them. People have told me it kind of reminds them more of the early, like the first 2. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. We kind of reference things from the first 2. So, you're always proud, at least I hope, hopefully, mm-hmm. You're always going to be proud of whatever your latest thing is. And this is no different for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can see what people mean by that, but I think it kind of stands on its own as well, as I think all of them do. They all have kind of their own different flavor. That's what's cool about Tomahawk is you just don't know what you're going to get. And just even within this album, there's a lot of diversity, even from song to song, you don't know what you're going to get. And I think that makes it really fun to listen to. But yet it's diverse. It's extremely thought-provoking, which I was not expecting, and is really, really just chill.
All right. Well, there's a fair amount of different sounds, but there's still continuity there. It still is basically a 4-piece rock band.
Mm-hmm.
There's not as many samples or things on this mm-hmm. as there have been on previous albums, so it's a bit more spacious. There's a bit more guitars and backup vocals. So
mm-hmm.
It kind of goes in some new directions, I guess.
Yeah, I really like guitars on quite a few of the songs. There's some, progressive pieces in Predators and Scavengers, as well as Tattoo Zero that I thought were really, really fun mixes, really fun to listen to. I love both those songs.
Oh, great! Thank you. Me too. And especially Tattoo Zero. There's that kind of lengthy middle instrumental part where definitely. I grew up listening to prog rock. I grew up, those were my heroes. Yes, and Gentle Giant and King Crimson and stuff like that. And so now just sort of referencing that through sort of the more, modern rock sensibility is enjoyable. And Scavengers and Predators too. There's kind of that sort of progressive, notey, busy kind of thing. I didn't want to do an entire album of that,
right.
But I think it works, in small amounts.
Yeah, well, and I like how it goes from, on Predators and Scavengers, how it goes from, like, that chugging, guitar into that, like that progressive sound with Patton's haunting vocals in the background. I think it was composed so well.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and then it has a nice, big, full chorus in the middle mm-hmm. of the song that kind of ties it all together. And so I kind of, you have to maintain a balance, not spaciousness and thickness, and then texture, too, having different textures, density. To me, a lot of hard rock, there's so much density, so much material presented so fast, it gets a bit overwhelming mm-hmm. for me as a listener, and I like to have some spaciousness and sparseness just to kind of give some breathing room between the different levels of activity, I guess.
Right, yeah, making it a little bit more airy and giving you kind of a little bit of a chance to take a breath and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you like to do a lot of different guitar tricks. That's what I call it, is tricks. I don't know what you call it. But obviously you are, very, very diverse in your musical composition. I know you have a degree in music, but you also, have these different experimental tricks that you seem to, just kind of throw out of your hat. What would you say your favorite or most maybe shocking one that you were able to come up with along the 20 years that Tomahawk has been going?
It's funny, a lot of that stuff I don't think I did that much of it on this album. There's a lot of weird harmonics and odd sort of little noises and things. But one thing I did, I remember a long time ago, I was taking guitar lessons from a flamenco guitarist who showed me how to make a snare out of the bottom two strings and put your fingernail in between the two strings, wrap them around each other. I think I even did an instructional video where I showed this, and then you flip the string around each other and then hold it down on the neck, and then when you play it, it creates this sort of, it sounds like a snare. It sounds more like just these pieces of metal wrapping against each other, and it's just a great, fun little trick you can do that's easy, doesn't cost anything, and yet makes a really noisy, loud, raucous sort of sound. So I would say that's probably my favorite.
That's pretty cool. It does not sound easy. How do you hold those two on the neck?
You really have to grip it, and you can't move it. Once you're holding it down, that's it. You're stuck there. If there's a will, there's a way.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what's cool about all these albums with those different sounds that you're just kind of going, how are they doing that? Yeah. So my favorite one on the album is Sidewinder. I love it.
Okay.
I think it has almost like a, Faith No More's cover of Easy kind of starts off with that kind of softness, but then that bass line comes in and it just switches a totally different direction. Every time I hear that lyric, stand up, stretch it out, I automatically think, I'm a therapist. I sit all day long. Oh. That's what I do. And so every time I hear that, I'm like, right, stand up, stretch.
That's funny. Yeah, I like that one too. It's not, that one is kind of it's very different from most of the rest of the album. Yeah, it starts off with just piano and drums, very sparse, and it gets heavier in the middle, and then it returns to the same chords as the intro, but now they're played on guitar and it's a little more fulled out.
Yeah.
To me, that one almost seems like a David Bowie song or something. It was one of my heroes. And actually, I think I threw in some Bowie references. Actually, the middle of Doomsday Fatigue, where it switches keys and keyboards come in, once again, and kind of goes to a major key just for a few measures. And that was, I thought, this sounds kind of Bowie-ish to me, if I might pat myself on the back on that.
Well, go ahead and pat yourself on the back, because I definitely had the same thoughts on a few as well, and I think it is enough that you hear that influence, but it's not like it's almost like you have to go, okay, wait a minute, is that what it is? Okay, yeah, that's what it is. Not, oh, that's definitely what that is,
Yeah, and that's a conscious, it wasn't a conscious nod, put it that way, but afterward listening to it is like, to me, when you make an album, when you make a song and you listen to it, if it reminds you of things you like, that's good. If it reminds you of things that you don't like, that's really bad.
Right.
So I think I got lucky on a couple of things.
Yeah. So with Doomsday Fatigue, I mean, clearly this album, I know the music has been going for the last 2 or 3 years, but clearly the lyrics were written around the last year with COVID. Yeah. There's a lot of references. Doomsday Fatigue, obviously one of the main ones. I think I know you guys call it what is it, spaghetti western, but I felt like it was like I was in a ghost town, which I guess could be the same type of I don't know, maybe just a different way of saying it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. It was almost like you're in a western, yes. And there's a showdown, and the two gunfighters are walking down the middle of the road, and yet you don't know if they're really there or not. And and what's real and what isn't. And yeah, that whole song kind of, it lent itself well to that sort of mindset, didn't it, of this sort of isolation.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's not meant to be dwelling upon negativity. We're also, you know, it kind of switches and kind of picks up, gets upbeat in the middle, and like, you know, we don't have to, it doesn't have to be this way, and it won't always be this way, and at least for a while, and then it switches back to the more dark sort of feel. So, you know, I guess no big message there other than like, you know, yeah, we've all suffered, and now hopefully there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, no, and I don't think you can put negativity and Tomahawk even in the same sentence. I mean, that's an oxymoron. So I agree.
Okay.
Recoil has kind of like a reggae, you know, influence to it, which I thought, it kind of threw me off. I, you know, was listening to it obviously all the way through, as we all should do every time with albums. But
yeah, sure.
I'm a stickler about that. And that's why I'm so glad vinyl's come back, because it kind of makes you don't get a skip around, you know. Plus it just has that fuller sound. Anyways, but yeah, I was kind of going, okay, there's these ebbs and flows to this album, and I was just absolutely enjoying the journey. And then that song came on, and I was like, oh, that was a left turn, but it still fits really well. It's a really cool song.
Yeah, and it kind of, it builds up though, and then it goes into like a heavier sort of double time thing, with a riff that, to me, once again, listening to it after it was done, it kind of reminded me of what I liked about Led Zeppelin.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an influence too. So, once again, you're mixing the sort of, you've got this sort of, I wouldn't say softer, but more sort of atmospheric verses, and then it gets to the harder, heavier choruses. And I mean, Mike can sing that stuff well. Mike is I think in a perfect world, he would be an R&B singer.
Yeah,
and he even told me when he was recording the vocal parts, he was thinking more like the Four Tops and the Temptations and things like that, like some of his vocal harmonies, which is funny because the album doesn't sound like that, but some of the vocal stuff does, and he's always kind of leaned that way. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought about it that way, but I mean, definitely he has such a intense vocal range and is just a master of his craft, as you are to yours. I mean, you guys have, you know, built a really cool foundation for Tomahawk, and it's fun to every album that comes, you know, even if it's 8 years in between or anything before that, it's always really exciting to see what you guys come up with each and every time.
Well, thanks.
So, Dog Eat Dog, that video, I'm pretty sure I've had nightmares since I've seen it.
Oh, come on. It's comedy. It's comedy. You've got these two men beating on each other, but then you've got dogs doing tricks, you've got the audience, and then at the end they overthrow their masters and become friends. Yeah. So, it's slapstick, but at the same time, you could say it's social commentary.
Yes.
You know, we live in this endlessly competitive world where you're constantly fighting, you know, and the people at the bottom are fighting the hardest for the scraps that their overlords are throwing to them. Yeah. And so, you know, it works on a couple of different levels, depending on how you want to interpret it.
Right, and I definitely interpreted it more the latter, but it's genius, you know, it's tough to watch, but in a really realistic and genuine way. Even though it is supposed to be slapstick, I definitely could get the message behind it, and I thought it was really well done, and really just, you know, thought provoking, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. Are you guys planning on putting out another video or single before the album drops tomorrow or next week?
I'm not exactly sure. Okay. I don't know for sure. I thought they were, but the last time I talked to someone at the label, I got the impression that maybe they weren't. So, all right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. So I had read or heard, I can't remember if it was a reading or hearing, you say something about we should all be trying to kind of get something about this quarantine. It should be more of a learning experience versus, just trying to survive throughout it. I feel like this album also has a little bit of that mixed in there as well. Would you say you mean kind of being more meditative and contemplative about how we want to live our lives or think about our lives? Is that what you were meaning?
I don't remember.
That's okay.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Absolutely, yeah. So you were saying how quarantine should be more of a learning experience.
Yes, okay, yes. Mm-hmm. Getting back to that. I think at one point I went in, I saw my doctor about something, and he actually pointed it out. And he said that, for some people, this has been a time of opportunity. And for me, I was relatively fortunate in that I had to agree with that, in that, okay, so I was relatively unaffected. I had a job, this library job, and I was still getting paid from that, so I wasn't desperate for money. I didn't really have anything scheduled music-wise as far as gigs or anything, so I wasn't, losing anything there. I stayed home, I practiced, I worked on material, I was giving lessons, online lessons, and, the rest of the time just, staying home, watching their health, staying in shape, doing simple things in the evenings with my family, whether they're doing crossword puzzles or jigsaw puzzles, and I'm building models, and so it wasn't terrible. Mm-hmm. But I feel genuinely sorry for a lot of musicians or bands or artists who were maybe getting started, and this was going to be their big year, and they had stuff scheduled, and they were ready to go, and had the great new album. And I know people who fall into this category. They had a great album, and they were ready to go, and then weren't able to do anything. Mm-hmm. And all these people, and then all the crew people who have been struggling. I know a lot of people, and especially in the club industry, in the restaurant industry, who have been practically wiped out by it. Mm-hmm. And so I just feel supremely fortunate in that it didn't happen to me. Mm-hmm. But so I was able to make it I wouldn't say a good experience, but it wasn't terrible. But I just genuinely feel for those who just got ruined, mm-hmm. almost just completely ruined by this.
Right.
You know what, Nika? I have to do a video thing.
Yep. No, that's totally fine. Thank you so very much for your time, Duane. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Well, thank you, too. Thank you for taking time. If next time we're up in Idaho, please drop by and say hello.
Oh, you will not have to ask me twice.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.